everybody. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. Lunch and Learns are short educational presentations on an important topic, and today is another one of those days where we have a very important topic for you. Today, we're going to be talking about remembering with love, honoring, and memorializing beloved pets who have passed. And we have Kelly with us today from Lap of Love. How are you, Kelly?
I'm good. Thank you. It's good to be here with you.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for joining us all the way from Georgia. How's the weather down there?
Actually, it's pretty crisp today, kind of
Oh,
chilly.
is it? That's what
Yeah.
we've got up here too. Well, I'm really glad you're here. I know that we tried to schedule this earlier. You were sick and I had something going on, and then I was sick, and
Yeah.
regardless, we're here now. So I'm
We're here
grateful.
now.
So,
Yep.
guys, we've got a really important topic for you today. It may be emotional as well. Unfortunately, we have heard from many members of our community lately of pets passing over. So we thought that
Mhm.
this was very timely to bring this to you. But let me tell you a little bit about Kelly. I know she'll talk to you about her expertise as well. And then we're going to get into the presentation with you. And then at the end, we're also going to take some time to talk to you about Lap of Love because they offer a lot of different services that I know our community can benefit from. First off, Kelly is a certified grief educator. She's a pet loss grief specialist, and she's a pet loss companion at Lap of Love Veterinary Hospice. She definitely has the expertise to talk to us about this really important subject today. And I know she's got a great presentation for us to give you some ideas on starting the healing process if your pet has passed. So, Kelly, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, like you said, Tracy, I'm a certified grief educator and pet loss grief specialist. Two things that are very near and dear to my heart, and just that I'm proud to say. I think I've always had a little bit of an interest in honestly grief and death. And, it's something that not everyone can completely understand, but it really is just so taboo. People don't know how to talk about grief, how to give it a voice, regardless of species, really. And in my own life, I have unfortunately had to say goodbye or see you later to several fur babies. And really, without any drama, it's life changing. It really is. And so I have had the honor to be on the pet loss support team with Lap of Love. And I really feel like it's a chance for me to put a lot of the pain that I've experienced in my own life to purpose. And so I consider myself honoring and memorializing all my fur babies as I do my job every single day and have the privilege to just walk with people on their journey and be present for whatever anyone needs at that moment. And I've had the privilege of talking to hundreds of people and really making a space for some of these tough topics and just things that are really hard that sometimes we like to actually run the other way from, but that doesn't really work in grief.
Yeah, good point. We're really fortunate to have people like you out there offering this type of support service. And it wasn't until I had connected with your organization recently, I had no idea that this was out there, that this existed. So I'm so glad we're connected. And I'm
Yeah,
so
me
glad you're
too.
taking the time to talk to our community.
And,
So,
we hear that a lot, not to interrupt you, Tracy, but a lot of people say, I just didn't know that there was support
yeah,
and kind of, go it alone because sometimes even people that live in the same house with you just don't understand the depth of your grief. And so for us to know that people, we are getting the word out and people know that they're not alone is important to us.
agreed. Awesome. Well, let me pop your presentation here into the broadcast.
Okay. All right. So we're going to take a little bit of time and talk about how we can honor and memorialize our fur babies and remember them with love. And to start, we'll talk a little bit about grief versus mourning. What's the difference and why does it even matter? And, interestingly enough, many people who are grieving really don't even realize that there's a distinction here, but in fact, that there is. Grief is very personal. It's our internal response to loss. No one can see it. Like when you're grieving and you go to the grocery store or Target, no one can see your grief. It's private. And mourning, differently, on the other hand, it's some type of outward expression. It's kind of like grief's voice. And giving ourselves permission to actively mourn is really in part how we start and then continue to move forward on our grief journey. And mourning work is also really going to be super individual. Everyone's grief journey is so unique and individual, and this part of things will be as well. And why does it matter? The reason is because outwardly grieving and actively mourning is what helps us heal. And it brings emotional comfort. Death does not end a relationship, it doesn't end love. And we kind of have to cultivate what it looks like now. And if we don't do that active mourning, then it might not feel like we're evolving in our grief. And truthfully, as hard as it is to imagine ever feeling any lighter, especially at the beginning, we do want to make some progress in our grief journey. It's important. We want to be able to figure out how to live with a broken heart.
Yeah, and I think something you said just a few moments ago, which is really important, is uh, your grief it's personal, and it
Mhm.
can be a hard journey, especially if you are not talking with people who understand that loss of a
Yeah.
pet, that love
Mm.
of a pet. Say you're talking to your parents, but they've never have a pet had a pet, they can't quite
Yeah.
understand that connection. So again, having that community and having a resource like yours is just so important.
Yeah, and people that love us in our lives, it is hard for people that love us to see us so sad. So often they go into fix it mode. How can I alleviate his or her pain just as quick as possible? And that's also not how grief works. So you're right. Finding connections and being able to talk about it and even just be present with people that understand is important. So here on this next slide, we talk a little bit about why it's important. And, this here says the work of honoring and memorializing, and it can truly feel like work sometimes. It can be hard to do these things, but it can absolutely promote acceptance. Um, our brains and our bodies need to start absorbing that this is actually happening and kind of adjusting to this whole new world. It provides emotional comfort, continuing that connection that we have is what we all want. Of course, we would like it to be physically here and not changed at all, but we want to be able to connect with them. It's still familiar. The love is still there. It can continue the bond with your fur baby that's died. I mean, I think that's the most important piece of this is that they're still always going to be loved, cherished, talked about, and remembered no matter what. Of course, it's different without them physically here, but the love remains the same. It can provide a sense of control around grief, and grief can feel very surreal and like we lack control very much. So, if we can find pieces, and I like to say control our controllables, if we can find those pieces that we can take some control back over and in our morning work, I think that's really important. And it can feel productive, for lack of a better word, in grief. It helps us celebrate the times we had and not only focus on our loss. Their lives, regardless of the number of years they've been here, it just means everything. Their life is full of richness and love and happiness. And so when we can do these things that honor and memorialize them, it really celebrates that they've lived. And hopefully we can remember someday not only that they've died, but that they really, really lived. And, we got to share in that with them. And then lastly on this slide, it says it feels good to be doing something for our loved ones. And, yes, we really do need to be able to distract ourselves from grief. Sometimes dosing the pains, people often say we have to get to work or school or take care of our families, but the grief lingers. And so to be able to focus our grief on something and pay attention to it. But, so sometimes we need to sit on the couch and have a good cry, but sometimes we want to do something a little bit active with the grief, and it can feel really good. And so what might memorializing and honoring them look like? Well, it can look like a lot of things. I mean, this list is far from all inclusive. These are just a few ideas that, we often share or hear people find a lot of comfort in, but, it can be anything. It really can be anything that you find that brings you comfort. Here it says memorial services, special readings, uh, and even the second bullet point there, creating a written memorial, anything that is like a memorial service, needless to say, often in human loss, it's one of the first things we do, whether it be planning a wake or memorial or funeral, even writing an obituary. So giving ourselves permission to do that too, and knowing this is a big one, there's no timeline on that. People often might think, well, I didn't do that right away. It's okay. If it's something that you find drawn to, go ahead and do it. Give yourself permission. And another important just point about memorials is that it might sound like it needs to be elaborate, and it doesn't. It can just be you. It could just be you and your immediate family. It could just be the written memorial, and all of that is okay. But they really do um, give ourselves a chance to honor them, and be able to kind of celebrate them either outwardly with the world or within our own families. Journaling is something that, of course, we love. Often, even if you haven't been a journaler historically in your life, in grief, journaling and even writing letters to your baby can be a great way to stay connected, to get some thoughts out of our mind, and continue the conversation, continue talking to them like we always have. Um, and candle lighting, I think candle lighting is such a symbol of hope and remembrance. And you can work that into like certain times of day. Sometimes nighttime or mornings are really hard. Sometimes food time is hard, dinner time, because they have their internal clocks. And so, when a 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock rolls around, it can just be a hard time of day. One of my favorite things that people often share that they do is buying flowers. Like if your dog or cat had like a certain color, like always wear a purple harness or collar or something like that. Maybe weekly you go out and buy a purple bouquet, a bouquet of purple flowers, and bring that beauty into your home. And that's their bouquet in a way to honor them. So that's one of my favorites. And getting out into nature, I think, is something that, needless to say, can be helpful in many aspects of life. But when you're grieving, getting out into nature, spending some quiet time, either by yourself or with someone that you trust in your grief journey, and just being able to feel close to your baby, talk to him or her, and even being able to see that in dark times, there's a lot of beauty around us. I think that's why nature is such a great thing. And then the last few, paying it forward, a beautiful way to be able to carry their legacy along, tapping into creativity. I think that doing something with our hands or something creative, whether it be drawing or painting, pottery, scrapbooking, creating a photo album of them, it can really be beneficial for our brains to have something to do like that while we're grieving. And then, of course, something that people are likely familiar with is purchasing memorial items. And there are so many these days, whether it be Etsy or Amazon, things like that. Purchasing those items and having, touchstones, necklaces, charms, pillows, urns, things like that, those really help us cultivate that continued connection. And it can feel just really good to have a little bit of them that we've put a lot of thought into back into our homes.
I love this. You have some wonderful ideas here. And I'm wondering too, if you're watching live or if you're watching on the replay, we'd love to have you share with us any ways that you've memorialized or honored your pets. Feel free to share in the comment section, and we'll flash your ideas up here if you're sharing during the live broadcast.
Yeah, I would love to hear what some other ideas are. Absolutely. And this is a really important one, doing it in your own time. These things take a lot of time. Active mourning and finding the things that bring you comfort is also an evolution. Just like grief evolves, this part evolves too. And it has to feel authentic to you. So, you know, I always say take time with the things you can and come back to what you can't. Because if you're trying to force yourself to do something, and journaling is a really good example of that. If it doesn't feel right to you right now, just know that you can try it. You can try it in a month from now. You know, you can try it now. And if it's not really helping or you're not finding it cathartic, then you maybe try it again or come back to it. Sometimes you just have to say, that wasn't for me, but I'm going to go here. It really does need to feel authentic to you. And remember that grief, of course, is not an event, it's a process. And grief was never really, you know, meant to be a destination that someone lands, but it is something that we will all experience inevitably because we choose to love. We choose to give our hearts to them. We choose to let them give all their unconditional love to us. And it's such a great love that I think we could probably all agree would never give up any bit of it for even all the pain that grief can bring. Um, but, you know,
Agreed.
it's like they say, love lives there first. And so our question kind of was just what you said, Tracy. What are some of the ways you've honored your sweetheart's memory? Some things that you've done. And I don't know if you have any, Tracy, that you want to share.
Boy, me, I mean, we do the same thing for all of our pets. We have a little pet cemetery on our land.
Oh,
And so usually, depending on the size, we usually have them cremated. So we have a little pet cemetery that has fish and gerbils and cats and chickens.
mhm.
There's all kinds of things out there. And I think just the idea of knowing that they're here, it's just kind of a special area we can go to if we need to just be in the space, think about them. I think that's what's worked for us. You know, we're very fortunate our dogs have not passed at this point. I mean, when I was a child, the dogs, my family dogs have passed. Um, so I'm not quite sure what I'll do when our first dog passes because I don't really want to think about it.
Sure.
But yeah, what about you? How have you honored and memorialized?
You know, pretty much all those things that have been part of this presentation, I've at least tried. But one of the most special things to me is and you know, I think this is probably there was an evolution here. This isn't something I that came easy at the beginning. But my fur babies that have passed, you know, they leave a lot, right, in our homes, even though I actually have small dogs, but regardless of their size, they have a big presence, whether it be, you know, with toys and, you know, just memories, things like that. And so in the dogs that I have now, I actually, when I feel ready, I let them partake in toys that have been special. Sometimes with one of my dogs, I've shared a collar and harness of a previous dog, and I always say to them, "You got to be careful with this because there's a lot of power in this toy or a collar or anything like that." And it really is just to me so special because I consider them like the younger siblings, you know, to see it like carried forward.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
Well, here, let's go through some of our comments here.
sure.
Let's see. Cheryl says, "Thank you for doing this today." Cheryl, you are very welcome. We love to bring programs to our community like this. So, Kristen said, "A good cry is always helpful when
Yeah,
dealing with grief." Yep, I would have to agree with that as well.
yeah.
Cheryl
There's a
says,
reason that expression exists, a good cry.
"Yep, exactly." Let's see. Someone says, "I set up a memorial garden with a bench. I
Mm,
can go out and think about and talk to my pups. I even have a plaque." That's a great
yes.
idea. I really love that. That seems very
Uh,
special and very, very much
mhm.
a great connection for this individual.
Absolutely. And you know what I love about things like that is that it's everlasting. You know, 5 years from now, you can still go to your bench and still be the place that you can really find a lot of closeness and connection with and talk to them. You know, it's just like, um, I'm a big talker in my head, you know, to my out loud sometimes and in my head to my fur babies that have passed. And I think continuing that conversation and just checking in, actively sending them some love is an important piece of it.
Yeah, agreed. Here's another fantastic idea. Cheryl planted a tree in the front yard. I
Oh,
love that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
timeless. Yep.
It really is timeless. Yeah, that's a good word for that.
Denise loved an idea that you had. Unfortunately, we're not in real time here. We're about 10 seconds behind, so I'm not sure. But I thought all your ideas were wonderful. So, as well, did Denise thought so as well.
Yeah.
Let's see. Cheryl says, I have wind chimes that make me think of my babies
Mm,
whenever they chime. Another fantastic idea. Love that. It's just so,
absolutely.
so connected to a sound. I think that's great.
Absolutely. And wind chimes, I've even known they don't have to be outside. They could just be inside because when you walk, by them, they might let off a little bit of the chime and it is just so beautiful. It can almost be like like give you immediate chills when you hear it.
Yeah, and I think it's a nice connection to nature as well. That's why I
Yeah.
really liked that you said that in your list, and a lot of the ideas that are coming
Mm,
through here are connecting with nature, being in the garden or planting that tree. I love that connection because our pets obviously are so connected to nature. So if that's how you're
definitely.
choosing to memorialize them and honor them, I think that's really special.
Yeah.
Let's see. Denise says, I have tattoos that bring so much comfort. I kiss his paw print goodnight every night. I know a
Oh.
lot of people that do that actually. That's pretty popular.
Yeah, tattoos especially, I think
Yeah.
are, obviously I know that they're not for everyone, but it is, just a testament to that. We want to carry them with us forever. And it's like a really outward proof that we always will. I actually have one of my dog's names tattooed on me. And so, and I do consider her one of my most special um, memorializations. It's just, it was cathartic even getting it, it was like, a transference of emotional and a little bit of physical pain.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
thanks guys for your ideas as well. It's really nice to hear how you
Mm.
memorialize your pets. So Kelly, I'm wondering, can you tell us a little bit more about Lap of Love? I know you have some wonderful services and you also have a pet loss support group. I'm sure people would love to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So our team, the pet loss support team, made up of 4 grief coaches, and we do have basically 3 main services. One of them is our pet loss support groups, which are at no cost. Anyone can join. You don't have to have used Lab of Love services. So our support groups are open to anyone. And there's such a profound meaning behind connecting with others who are grieving. There's a lot of healing in it. And so we consider our pet loss support groups a very sacred space. And, like I said, they're free of cost. We have one once a day. So sometimes people will join. We usually ask people to limit registrations to once a week just so that we can help as many grievers as possible. And it's very popular, so a lot of people need this support. And just the fact that, so many people are finding us for these, even just these groups, is like a testament to what we said before, Tracy, is that people need this support and go online, seek out how can I get supported in my grief. And so we're honored to hold this space for them. We also offer personal support sessions, usually by phone, for 50 minutes. Now there is a cost associated with those. It's $50, but so that could be with any of the grief coaches. And that's like if you wanted a little more personalized support, you want to just tell your story or talk about something that you're particularly struggling with, or even get some ideas on coping skills. Coping, none of us are experts in grief, right? I mean, the world really doesn't teach us how to grieve. We have to learn while we're in it, in the thick of it. And so having some ideas for coping really does help. And then lastly, our last service is kind of like a workshop. It's a 6-week course. And it's in a really small group format. Usually there's about 6 people in it. And the same 6 people meet for all 6 weeks. And it's similar to this in that we go through a few slides, talk about certain aspects of the grieving journey. And then the rest of the hour we spend together kind of just talking about it. And because the groups are small and we meet for several weeks, it's many people find real connections in those little groups and the bigger groups too. But when you're spending 6 weeks with only 6 people, you really get to know each other. So it's very, very sweet. And then of course we have our Facebook page, which is a great tool. I mean, it's Facebook, so you have to obviously go into it with a little bit of a grain of salt. Everyone's in a different place on their journey, but it's such a compassionate group. It's private, obviously. So, we would have to like let you in. But it really is, seeing the love there. People share their photos and their hard times and their good times. It's just such a community that we've been so proud of building.
I love that. That sounds so wonderful. And Denise agrees. She said the pet loss
Mhm.
grief groups have been a huge part of
Mhm.
her journey. The 6-week grief course was so helpful too. And I can imagine too, especially if you don't have a support system around you, having this connection with these 6 key people who are really
Mm.
getting to know you. I would imagine, and I'm curious if you keep stats or anything, that after the group ends, do these people, still keep in touch because there's been such a profound connection over those 6 weeks?
Yeah, I don't have any like solid number statistics, but I do know that by the end of the 6 weeks, people are. We always offer to exchange emails, but before I get the chance to even offer, they're already doing it. And I've known many people who have stayed in contact and really found friendships that have blossomed, and I always think it's really just a precious friendship because, your fur babies who you've been honoring have kind of brought you together. Of
Yeah,
course, we always wish that no one had to seek out these services, every group that we're in will say, I always say, I'm glad you're here, but I'm sorry there's a reason for you to be. But to be able to connect with other people, I think is so important.
I agree. Actually, the first time we were supposed to go live with this, a gentleman texted me. He's a member of our community. Um, he hadn't been to one of our events before, but he was signed up for one, and he actually texted me to cancel that event because his beloved dog had just passed.
Mhm.
And he sent me a picture of his dog, and it just, there was an instant connection, even though I had never met this gentleman.
Yeah.
The picture of the dog riding in the car, I could tell that that was, a profound moment for him. And then he asked me, did you, do I know of any support groups that were out there? And fortunately, I had connected with you already at that
Mhm.
time, so I was able to pass on the information. So I'm sure he reached out, but just such a great service that you offer. Just thank you to you and everyone else on your team for everything you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that and for passing the information on. And, one thing that I always like to tell people, because I think, when you're already grieving, um, there could be like some anxiety too about like, what's a support group going to be like? I've never even joined a support group for anything in my life before. Is this for me? So I always like to tell people that it can be whatever you want it to be. It's because we do everything by Zoom. Everything's virtual, which is a blessing because we can help people from everywhere.
Exactly.
Um, no one is ever going to call you out. No one says, "Okay, Tracy, it's your turn to share." It can very much be whatever you need it to be. Of course, a lot of people choose to share, but you don't have to. So sometimes people come just to see if this is something that brings them comfort. They don't turn their camera on, they don't choose to share anything, and that's okay. Just being there and connecting in that way is important. So I think, just knowing that, I just like to say that often to people so that it can alleviate some of the anxiety of like, what's that going to be like? I don't think I have the, like want to try to figure that out and potentially being called out because it can be kind of nerve wracking, to share. It takes a lot of courage to share,
I
but
agree.
not everyone has to.
Well, that's it's nice that you described that, because I have a feeling people would be wondering.
Yeah.
That would be me. I would most likely be a
Me too.
wallflower initially because I would be crying the entire time, and it's very hard
Yeah.
for me to get any words out
Hmm.
during that time, but
Yeah.
maybe seeing the strength of others,
Right.
would help me to get to that point, so I can see how that
Yeah.
would benefit me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. I'm the same way. That's probably why I always say it.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for listening and for your questions and for
Yeah.
sharing. We really appreciate it. That's why we bring these lunch and learns to you, especially when we find these amazing people out doing these great things to help others. We want to bring that information to you. And like Cheryl says, you're absolutely right. It's good to know that we are not alone.
Mm.
So thank you very much, Kelly, for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope we can stay connected to you over next year and maybe have you come back and visit us a few more times to just let us know of any other ways we
Yeah.
can help support our community as they, go through these types of things.
Absolutely. I would love that. And thank you for having me and, really opening up the door to this conversation because it can be uncomfortable and it is hard to talk about, but we need to be able to do that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, everybody, and enjoy your day. And we will bring you another Lunch and Learn again very soon.
All right, Tracy. Thank you.